Here's my shooter.
Alright, what we're going to do is get your speaking order, which you should definitely disclose, so you'll get accurate speaks at the end of the competition. And your preferred pronouns if you wish to disclose. Starting with opening Guttmacher.
Peter speaking first, you're late.
Yola speaking first.
Is it better?
Absolutely.
Opening opposition.
Igor speaking first, data please.
And Hania speaking second, data.
Huge. Closing government.
Number.
Last but not least, CO.
George speaking first. Neil speaking second.
Alrighty, unless there's any questions, I'm sure you all know the rules of debating. Please time yourselves onto each other to ensure it's all accurate. Remember to start wrapping up your speech at 7, so you know, the 15-second grace period to finish the point you're on. If you want to start new points in the grace period, don't do that finish it. And with that, it's recorded out. Call on the Prime Minister to open up the case that stands in their name. Here.
Does the mic actually do something, or
I imagine it picks up audio. Yeah.
like?
It's probably more for the camera than like the room.
I'm asking, is it performative or is it functional?
I think it's for the recording, guys.
Okay. When the revolution starts eating its own children, you know you're fucked. What does this criticism probably look like? It's left-wing groups and NGOs going on Instagram and TikTok and saying, look at how they fucked up, look at this problematic, look at how they're not doing enough diversity hiring, look at how they're not allowing minorities to speak out on public spaces and forums and whatnot, right? It's probably also trendy, right? People pick up on it. Oh, one big influencer does it and another big influencer does it, and it spreads like wildfire through left-wing communities. It's also usually done by the most radical people. Not only the most radical of leftists have the time to look over organizations they already support to try to find fault in what they're currently doing, right? It's also probably people who have very strong opinions and also garner their own business on the idea of creating toxic opinions or creating opinions of criticism, because criticisms garner engagement on social media, right? What does this mean tangibly for the debate and how this looks like? There's two ways that this can turn out. One, this is going to be utterly nothing and no debate is going to come out of this. Probably all teams in this debate are going to not go with that side because then there isn't debate. And probably if there are some tangible impacts, they're mostly going to be harmful for the organizations themselves, which are broadly aligning with the ideas that the left would support. Three primary things in my speech. One, how this is going to cut into the profits and thusly the ability of these organizations to tangibly help people. Two, how it alienates people from the left who agree with these messagings. And three, where there is an opportunity cost and saying this means not saying something else. Why does this cut into profits? Note that these organizations are large organizations funded by sources that are not consistent revenue streams, right? They're not businesses like McDonald's. They get their money from projects, they get their money from subsidies. They get a significant amount of money for direct people giving them money every month and then subscribe to their idea because they want to help women get abortion, or they want to help whatever the other one was, like people have free speech or whatnot, right? This means that the funding that they have is inherently mercurial. Any tipping point that you can create means that you can significantly diminish their ability to do the things that they want to do. Meaning, insofar as the debate is largely going to agree that in view of the left, but also probably objectively, these organizations are helpful to minority groups and to people who are disenfranchised, the point where you create a potential for their funding to be lower than it was previous months, you limit their ability to tangibly help people. What does this mean? At the point where significant people on the left, people who are popular, people whose voice carries meaning within the community, call out somebody for doing something, it probably means that some people are going to stop donating for these things. You can donate to something else, right? This means that that an organization providing abortions to people is not going to be able to provide that one extra abortion, right? Who's not going to provide that one person with the help that they do need as a disenfranchised group in a bad society. This means that tangibly they're able to harm people who they should be primarily protecting, which is practically bad, but also principally unjust. Before that closing, you have something opening.
Okay, if they move the support to another group and just send the money elsewhere, like another abortion clinic gets some more money, right? This is symmetrical?
No, that abortion clinics are physical things in physical spaces. If you defund one, you harm the women who live next to that abortion clinic. Not everybody has the ability to go out of state to get an abortion. But furthermore, knocking some organization down a peg for the potential that you might help somebody else is also not a net benefit. No, these people might just say, fuck it, I will just keep my money there. Or they may, right? Meaning you don't have the ability to prove that it's going to be a zero-sum game on net. But also note, why does this alienate people from the left? And this ties into why this is practically and principally both unacceptable. At the point where a lot of people broadly associate with the identity of being left-leaning or left-wing, this is a core part of your identity, of the way that you self-actualize as a human. You meet other people, you ask them, are you left-wing or you right-wing? You try to garner from their behavior, right? Broadly, you tie the way that you perceive yourself, but also how you perceive other people in the community to what the left in any given community says or does. This means that they have a lot of control over the prism through which you are perceived. Because before I ask you your name, if I see that you're acting in a specific way, I'm going to assume some attributes that apply to you based on your behavior, based primarily on the way that your political disposition probably is. This means at the point where the left criticizes something, and my dad sees this on TV, and he knows that his son is a weird leftist, he's going to say, my son thinks like these idiots. They're harming their own. They're calling out the people that they used to support. He probably thinks like this. This tarnishes the reputation of individuals because organizations have larger control over your identity than you have. People think preconceptions about you before you even open your mouth. Therefore, this is principally unjustly harming the people who want to have their identity associated with the left, but don't want to support movements that are going to harm their own people that they care about. But secondarily, this incentivizes more people to find out stupid faults that don't tangibly matter. This happens somewhere in America, then a stupid Croatian YouTuber says, oh, but I checked the Croatian abortion clinic and they're also all white, because the whole country is white. This is also bad. And this is not a good thing, because it cuts down funding across the globe for things that people should have access to, e.g. abortion clinic, right? But this also angers the average leftist. This means that there is a consistent perception of the left garnered by rising right-wing populism that is also not totally unhinged from reality. That is that the left likes to find fault in things that they don't need to find fault in. Right? Meaning at the point where the left sees, oh my god, they're criticizing abortion clinics, they're criticizing free speech organizations, Jesus Christ, when will it end? At that point, more leftists are more likely to step away from broadly associating with the left. This is why we have the rise of agnosticism, like political agnosticism, political apathy, when they don't believe that the left is realistically representing the things that the left should care about. Lastly, there is a tangible opportunity cost. Note, there are other things that you could criticize that are so much worse than this. There is a billion organizations doing much worse things in harming intersectionality, harming people of all groups and all ages that are discriminated against in society. There is a lot of companies not having enough diversity hiring. There is a lot of companies not giving minority the ability to exercise the right to free speech that you could be calling out and garnering public support. And then saying, if you want to help this, donate to another organization. A positive messaging that is going to contribute to the overall funding of the left and of the organizations that help people, as opposed to that which is going to limit the funding and the tangible ability of these organizations to help. Meaning, when you have a limited amount of airtime, a limited amount of political capital, a limited amount of nerve that people are willing to give to your messaging, when you choose to attack these organizations, you're actively deterring from your own ability to criticize other organizations. Insofar as those other organizations are bigger perpetrators of bigger crimes, the opportunity cost is in and of itself a harm within this debate. For all of these reasons, proud to OG.
I'd like to thank the speaker for that fine speech. The leader of the opposition to continue today. They're here.
I will take my minutes just to. Is the panel ready? Yep. We'll start. Next one. Let's paint a picture.
You are a liberal organization, but not a well-planned. They value principles like free speech, but lack awareness of broader intersectional issues. So, for example, how a black person, when you are a black person, you are more likely to take your vote taken away. How, when you're a black woman, you are less likely to get access to abortion because of structural barriers like redlining, like you're just having less money, you being further away, you having less access to contraception, etc., etc. So, for example, that just presents like you don't give black women like higher subsidies when you're an NGO that is supporting women. You, for example, don't have trans-friendly doctors at your clinic or something like that, right? How the criticism actually looks like? It is conducted in left wing using left-wing media. So the main recipients of this narration is other leftists and liberals. How it sounds like, it's probably they're helping only white women, or they're only helping the majority group. Note that they still acknowledge the help that they bring and the principles that they are following. Still acknowledge and agree the principles that they help access free speech, body autonomy, and all of those things that both sides, the liberal and the leftist, agree. They just add the intersectional aspect to it. So the criterion of the debate and our way of victory is this debate will be just won by a person that proves more marginalized groups get access to help. And preemptive way why this clash is the most important. Those are the people who are not getting help currently. They often have no alternatives, or even the things that are accessible to them, they are just less accessible than a white woman that earns more, that has more, richer family, etc. Those are also the groups that have it hard for like racism or structural issues in society. They are the most vulnerable and the impact on them is biggest. So when the PM says it's gonna take away one abortion from a clinic, it probably took away that from a straight white woman, which can on average still get that help elsewhere and feel comfortable with it. If we actually put that money elsewhere, we put that money into another clinic, which is fully inclusive, and a trans person is gonna get an abortion. That on average is like 1% help, 1% help ratio, but on our group, on our side, we help a person that is more marginalized, therefore the impact on that is bigger because she wouldn't get that otherwise.
Yeah, so PM already says that the debate is about organizations probably accepting these changes. Do you agree with this opening position? Is this a part of it?
I will move on to that. So how immigration is received? Because I think so. So you get some kind of backlash. You feel in some way attacked by a group you should think you should be able to help, right? And the group that you feel like should like you, that is supporting you right now, because they are giving you resources, they work with you. So for example, the volunteers, which are mostly young people and left-wing people who just have a lot of time and are very principled, that can like put this effort into you. They agree and channel your message, and now you are scared that they will take it away. Why are you likely to change after the scare of using the leftists, and why leftists will actually take back support if they don't agree with 100% of your message? Like, look how impactful this group can be. The Biden was criticized by the left over Gaza, which was one of the issues, and then the alternative is Trump, and people were still like, oh, I'm not gonna vote for Biden because of one of those issues. So it's it's kind of all or nothing. So how do they react in the light of this? So either they are like good NGOs who just want to do more good, or they are like bad capitalists and react because they don't want to lose support and the money and the other. So most probably they are somewhere in the middle, so they have two incentives and do something about it. So what do they actually do about it? They probably employ a minority. They probably employ an advisor. They probably employ someone who can deal with those issues in a way, or at least like consult or something. Look, it's the case of like our debating council having special advisor for POC issues and them having a separate space that is only for this minority group to have their voice, to have their impact. This is probably somewhere upper up, not just like, I don't know, you employ one teacher or one educator that is a minority group. You probably want to put them somewhere up there because you want the change to be visible, so like let people stop the backlash and actually see it as actually a step that pushes the intersectionality further, right? So this is a very small, almost virtue signal thing that you can do to limit the backlash, and that's why I think this is the most probable way that this happens in the debate. Is there another POI? Yeah.
Broadly, the left becomes more apathetic, as exemplified by the left people choosing to not vote Biden because he's problematic in different areas, even though it means they will harm themselves more if Trump wins. This is exactly what happens when you call them out on things like this, harming organizations that they broadly support.
Yeah, and look what happens in general. Those people cannot stay in a position when they are disadvantaged. They don't want to. So what do? They change, so the people go back to, especially that the change is usually very like narration based. It's not kind of restructuring your whole organization. You can do small things, small shifts, kind of narration arguments to change it. So how do we actually help those people better if we get those cancelists, if we get those people in it? There are just, first of all, more minority groups inside of those NGOs and more minorities on higher positions. Those people are there to decrease the intersectional issues as like, that's why they were employed there. So now there are people who can help you to feel safer when you can talk to an inclusive doctor. Now there are people who can kind of point out that, I don't know, HR being kind of racist in their posts, or like the narration that they're sending is probably not sensitive enough and we should change it. So what does it actually impact? First of all, I think it impacts further on these NGOs having like more PR problems and again being in the scare of them losing the support of the left wing, losing, I don't know, fluidity or whatever. But first, the most important thing is, I think they are just there to help those minority groups to get help. So now those black women get more subsidies, whereas so they can like get an abortion quicker, or they can get safety housing when their partner is abused, and they can get a little bit of more money than a white person because they need it and because they structurally were underprivileged, and because of that, these groups get just more help from this specific organization. Otherwise, they wouldn't. I think this is a soft impact, but a very important one. Thank you for that.
To give that message, and I call on the Deputy Prime Minister to continue the debate. Here.
Presented with the option to either give everyone access to abortion or to make sure that everyone under intersectionality that has 2,000 different groups is equally represented, we would choose a tangible impact and give women access to abortion. So proud to propose this solution. 3 things in my speech. Firstly, the weighing on lack of funding and why this is crucial material that beats opening opposition but also our closing. Secondly, why this alienates people from the left wing, and then some extraneous rebuttal on 2 other points coming from opening opposition. So firstly, the lack of funding and why lack of funding is crucial. I think Peter is good at explaining what this messaging looks like and why this messaging is crucial to alienate people. Insofar we prove that, this means that opening opposition cannot just say, oh, but these NGOs are going to hire 5 more black women and push them to the top, it's all going to be good. Because insofar this point is correct, this means that they don't have the funding to hire 5 more black women because people are not donating to them. What do we say on that point? We are telling you that the messaging will be aimed at NGO being the issue. This means that if you support and donate the NGO, this means you're complicit in the discrimination of black women who are not hired as much. If you support and donate to this NGO, this means you're complicit in their oppression, and you're also the oppressor now, even if you donate because you want women to access abortion. But the second thing is also the messaging will be that this is awful, because the messaging will be the spaces that are supposed to protect women are also oppressing them. You are also the oppressor if you donate, which means that people will not be likely to donate anymore to these NGOs. And I think Petra does a good job of explaining to you why these NGOs are literally hinged on the donation of individuals and people. But secondly, if insofar this means that people are less likely to fund them, this means that opening opposition's case, like their only rebuttal coming the POI is that you can just direct funding to other NGOs. The response to this would be to prove that insofar no NGO can satiate the needs of the left wing, which I will go on to prove, no NGO would get funding on their side of the house. Why? Because Peter already tells you that people are going to start researching their local NGOs. But it's extremely hard to be equal in all fields. It is extremely hard to give everyone an equal platform because you have a limited amount of resources, a limited amount of time, and a limited amount of platform to turn this whole thing into oppression Olympics and then have to decide, do Jewish women deserve more platform or do black women deserve more platform? Do transgender women deserve more platform or do poor women deserve more platform? It is never possible to give everyone the equal amount of platform, and it's extremely easy to find faults in every single NGO. Is there a white man leading them? Is it a white man their main sponsor? How many people do they have on the board? Which means that insofar this is true, it will be extremely hard to not criticize close to every single NGO on their side of the house. Why is this important? This is important because even if there is a lack of inclusivity on some levels, and even if you don't have half white, half black stuff, we still have two things. Firstly, you tackle the umbrella issues. And we believe that these issues are important because insofar you have a limited amount of time and resources, you have to tackle the issues that impact every woman and every minority. This means that insofar we prove that black and white women on our side of the house both access a portion, we believe that this is far more valuable than tackling issues which you are unable to tackle at the end of the day. But secondly, we have a broader scope of people. On their side of the house, they maybe prove that in their best case scenario, they hire 5 more people of color. On our side of the house, we proved that NGOs have money to allow thousands of women to access abortion. We believe that this is a much more intense impact. But why does this outweigh other impacts within this round? Because firstly, it is the least speculative. Insofar you tell people that they should feel guilty about donating to NGO, they will not donate, which means that NGO has less money to fund abortions, less money to lobby for policies, and less money to help women. But secondly, this is also tangible and intense, because this isn't hiring some abstract 5 people. This literally means that women are forced to go on with their pregnancies, and they're going to be miserable for the rest of their life because they don't have the money to go to another state to have an abortion, and within their state there is no one to fund them because their local NGO was shut down. But secondly, let's talk about alienating people from the left. So why do people opt into the left wing? And why are people left wing? Firstly, it's oftentimes the emotional appeal. It's the emotional appeal of people who are suffering and you're not looking to oppress those people. It's the emotional appeal of people who are underprivileged and people whom you want to help, and it is a feeling of injustice because some people are systemically screwed over by the system. But secondly, it's irrational of every person to feel the need to do justice and to help people. So what is the response coming from the right wing to the left wing, and how does this entangle, and how does opposition bench just strengthen this response and make people who are left-leaning be moderate or apathetic? Because the right wing oftentimes says that the left wing is sensitive, that they're overbearing, that they're micromanaging, that they're virtue signaling, which means that the only thing they do is sit in their mother's basement and think about all the issues and the oppression in the universe without actually doing anything. And know that also people who are moderate or left-leaning are aware of this criticism. Insofar you tell people who have the best intention, which is to help, to donate, and to fix issues, that what they are doing is actually wrong and is oppressing people because the NGO they donated to doesn't have 5 black, 5 white women, where they have 7 white and 3 black women, people feel a couple of things. Firstly, people feel it's absurd and micromanaging. I know that there is a reason as to why equality is good. I think we are all aware of that. But an average informed voter doesn't maybe see it in the same way in which we see it. Which means that insofar that voters see abortion is good and this clinic is allowing people to access abortion, and then gets criticism such as, no, this abortion clinic is evil and you're evil for donating because they're not equal and not allowing everyone to have a freedom of speech, a lot of these people will feel this is absurd. Secondly, people feel like it is never enough. Whatever you do, you are bad, and this leads to a lot of negative emotions because you're in pursuit of justice and you're in pursuit of helping people, but all you get is slammed down. Thirdly, people feel it's performative. People feel that they are not actually doing anything, just having to say things out in the ether for other people to hear, so other people will feel good. Before going on closely.
Yeah, but why do you think that people who want to support like all these things will just go and say, oh, everything is bad just because few things did change?
Because people become apathetic. They become unhopeful for the situation to change because whatever they do, it is never good enough. You're always oppressing someone. If you give resources to one NGO, you're taking away from another NGO, which means that you're inherently oppressing the group of people. But fourthly, it loses tangibility. Because if you donate to an abortion clinic, and that abortion clinic pushes out stories about women who are now happy, who are living a good life, you feel a tangible impact. Insofar as the main thing you hear about NGOs is, oh, this NGO has a male white donor and this person is running the NGO, this feels untangible to you. You don't know what the impact is, you don't know what you're supposed to do, you only see a situation unraveling, you're feeling negative and you're feeling bad. And this does not lead you to leaning into the right thing, this rather leads you to being apathetic. Now why is this crucial? Firstly, because you lose voters, because they're more likely to be apathetic. But secondly, left-wing people are always more likely to be apathetic because in their situation they always want to feel completely good, and this is never possible. But also, I think that this also then tackles opening opposition's case, because we believe that their main push is like, but NGOs are not hiring enough black women. We believe that some issues that they point out can never be fixed is because we have so many groups and a limited amount of resources and capital. For all of these reasons, opening government.
that comes to your thoughts on speech, and I call on the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to continue the debate. You're here.
Okay, so since, as I stated before, since this is a recorded debate, I want to say hello to my family and my friends who are watching this. Okay, so I will start in 3, 2, 1. Let's start with what the OG has said. First of all, OG has a big problem. They assume that people on comparative won't do anything, or just won't simply donate the money to other organizations. Why is that simply not true? People want to spend that money on an NGOs because they have a need to fulfill. They want to feel good about themselves. They want to feel like they're helping others, and because of that they're empathetic. That's why even if they don't like these NGOs, they still have this specific need to fulfill, so they will just donate somewhere else to still fulfill this specific emotional need. That means that on both sides of the house they are probably donating somewhere, and we believe that this is out of the debate to discuss whether there are NGOs that are like slightly better or slightly worse in helping with abortion, because at least they're helping someone. The second thing that they have problem with is that they think that if the organization changes, people won't go back and support it once again. 4 reasons why they will definitely go back and still support it. First of all, they don't want to feel, they won't stop supporting it in the first place because they don't want to feel like they did something wrong in the past. So even the organizations are scared of losing the support, it is probably still mitigated because people don't want to admit to themselves that they donated money to an organization that is not good, so they don't want to have regrets. Second of all, they don't want to listen, they still want to listen to the if they like the organization, they probably want to listen to the organization defend itself. They probably want, if they liked it, if they supported it, if they gave their hard-earned money, they will most likely not want to feel bad about themselves, so they will listen to the organization defending itself and will search for that change and will accept the change from the organization when it happens. Fourth of all, those people have still access to left-wing media, and media presented these NGOs, so they have very good access to see that the change happened and once again go back into supporting the organization. Or they can go somewhere else, and as I say, because they want to fulfill their needs to be good. So that means that on the best case scenario of OG, those organizations only lose support for a very short period of time in which that support goes somewhere else. That means for a very short period of time, women in one region will get help at the expense of women in the other region. That is the best case that can happen. That means that we believe that this is, first of all, still on the set criterion of amount of people helped. This is still symmetrical, and we don't believe that we should think that women in one region are for some reason more important than women in other region, because still help, as I said, is what should be. Is what should be done. They also say on OG that, it will be done performatively and it is very, very expensive. First of all, those left-wing people don't do it just with vibes. They simply check statistics. You can very easily check how much white people someone has in a board. So they will probably see it well if something is performative, because if it was a decision based on statistics, then probably seeing the change will be also checked based on statistics. That means that they cannot do a very bad change. Second of all, I don't believe that being intersectional is expensive. You will probably pay a black person the same exact salary that you would pay a white person. You would probably, if you want to be intersectional, you will probably just have to acknowledge those needs and help those needs. I think thinking that intersectionality is expensive is very much a false narrative. So that means that those companies, as we explained, are urged to do it, have all means to do it, will do it, and in this way they will regain their support. But next thing that was said that I would want to move on to is preemptive change, because as OG well explained, this is a trend. This trend grows. That means that more and more people are going to get around it, and if this is a trend, other NGOs will probably get scared that they will be the next NGOs targeted. Why? Two reasons. First of all, they often just simply look at media. They see that criticism happen. They see how this can badly affect other NGOs. Second of all, they communicate with other NGOs and see their problems. That means that if this has, for a short period of time, decreased one organization's profit, that means they are scared of this happening to themselves, especially if they operate on the same demographic. That means that they are more likely, because they are scared and not want to lose money, that is the fundament of them operating. That means that they are more likely to preemptively do those changes and preemptively become more intersectional to avoid that criticism happening to them in the future. So that means that we are able to achieve positive change of intersectionality, even without that criticism happening directly at those specific NGOs, which means that we are once again helping more minorities without even harming those NGOs on the way. Closing.
Yeah, so you give a bunch of reasoning as to why people will not donate to these organizations anyway. However, the only mechanism for change is that the NGOs are scared of losing money. Which is it? Do they change who they give the money to, or do people not care?
I think the problem is that no matter what people do, NGOs are scared of losing the money. Being scared doesn't have to be rational. Being scared doesn't have to be done based on specific metrics of money. If they see this amount of criticism floating at them and other reasons that Igor explained to you why they might be scared of losing that money, they will change no matter if they specifically see a drastic dip in their profit or if not. And also once again, OG also said something about alienating people again. I think that this narration is not that if you support them you are not specifically left-wing. The narration is that they're not perfectly left-wing and they should do better, because those people who spread those narrations still want those NGOs to operate because they still do positive change happening, but they just want them to change. They do not want to destroy them, they want them to change for the better. So with that, they do not want to alienate people as well from supporting this organization ever in the future. So, just on the metric that was not contested, on the amount of minority group help, on the best case for OG, they have a slight short-term downgrade in their profits, where those profits goes to other people. That means that probably still the same exact amount is help. On our side, we have not only, the same amount of people help, but we are also able to target minorities better and help those people who are the most vulnerable group in this debate better that OG is never able to get. OG never proved to us how they are able to improve intersectionality at any level in those institutions. That means that they are fucking up all minorities without any alternative for them, at least on our side. Maybe after a longer while, but they will get something, some help, some NGOs will change. Thank you.
I'd like to execute my speech, and I call on the member of the wish to continue this debate.
I want to make two pieces of framing very clear at the beginning of this next speech. Firstly, I think there is a massive distinction between liberal NGOs and groups and left-wing NGOs and groups that I think has been largely missed by top half. I think liberal NGOs and groups broadly have buy-in from moderates, both voters and politicians, and we should not just assume that liberal means liberal in the American sense. I think oftentimes these groups are liberal in the sense of supporting individual freedom, i.e. libertarianism. So oftentimes these unions and think tanks that support things like the right to free speech or abortion, but justifying it on the basis of the right to privacy or non-interference by the state, are not necessarily automatically aligned with the most left-wing groups, right? Oftentimes these are liberals, the George Soros crowd, or centrist Democrats and Republicans. This is really important in the debate, as I'm going to explain in my extension, because openly government fails to meet the burden of proving why you need liberal NGOs crucially, and why you can't have other left-wing groups or NGOs popping up to take their place. I'm going to weaponize it against them, not against them because they're open, but yeah, prove by the hour. Second piece of framing. What is the most active and direct way in which NGOs can actually achieve change? Because there's a lot of nebulous stuff in this debate. I think the way in which the most direct way that NGOs actually do their job is by influencing government policy, and that's on two fronts. Firstly, by directly lobbying for policies, meeting up with lawmakers and other policymakers and lobbying for specific policy packages. Like a lot of these institutes literally essentially operate as think tanks. If they're 50 to 100 people with PhDs that go draft plans and shit and talk to the local Republican senator. Or secondly, they just try and guide the legislative agenda and make the lawmakers more friendly and amenable to certain views, to shifting the Overton window. So I think this is lower burden, but like, we don't have to prove that they actually pass policy, just that they shift the window such that people are relatively more amenable to certain important liberty and guaranteeing policies. Why is it the most important impact in the debate if we prove that these NGOs are far worse at influencing policy on their side of the house? Because top-up just talks about direct benefits, like abortion clinics, administering specific things to certain people, but this is way, way better than that. Firstly, the impact more people, insofar as government policy helps everyone, not just the employees of that organization, which probably employs 50 people, or the direct people that get benefited by things like abortion clinics. And secondly, I think this is the most unique good that NGOs can do, insofar as other alternatives exist. If you have your free speech has been cut off, there are legislative, you can go to the courts or something like that, you can sue someone. Or for example, if you need an abortion, oftentimes you just you can go to like a hospital. Or I think that organized advocacy is what you uniquely need to do as an NGO. And insofar as intersectionality is important in debate, we prove that we get those benefits to the most amount of people as possible. So how crucially then does this criticism harm the capacity of NGOs to influence government policy and shift the Overton window in a good way? There are two broad mechanisms that I want to talk about here. Firstly is I think this fragments these organizations and divvies up their funding in a terrible way because it diverts funding to left-wing NGOs versus liberal NGOs. I'm going to do some strategic commentary on the interactions we get on top-up. Opening government says now people are likely to pool their donations and less likely to volunteer at these NGOs. Opening opposition POI and say, well, why wouldn't you just support another NGO or put your money in another NGO given that abortion or free speech is clearly something that's important to you? Opening government say there are two things that happen. One, either you're just like super apathetic and you don't give the money, or secondly, you'll put your money in something like geographically very, very far away, actually a question mark. So I think that this is oftentimes going to be true. I think this happens to some people, but let's be fair, let's be charitable to the stuff that opening opposition says. I think also lots of people are just going to divert their funding to other left-wing organizations that they do think just genuinely fulfill their wishes more. So that means that if opening government fails to prove that left-wing NGOs are worse than liberal NGOs at doing this job, then I don't think that they're necessarily comparative. So why is it the case that we need liberal NGOs doing this job and why this fragmentation is bad? Two things I want to talk about. Firstly, I think that these liberal NGOs have access to things like prominent donors or people that have pre-existing connections to a lot of these politicians. What does this look like? It looks like people from the business world who might not be raged like the reincarnated ghost of Karl Marx, but care about things like individual liberty, things like free speech, or things like abortion rights because they think that the state shouldn't interfere in those things. It looks like rich like George Soros or other wealthy businessmen who aren't super leftist, but have pre-existing connections with lots of lawmakers, are really good at lobbying because they've done this thing for decades. Secondly, because I think that liberal NGOs, as I've already framed, appeal uniquely to lawmakers who might not necessarily have a very left-wing agenda, don't necessarily care about intersectionality in and of itself, but care about individual liberty. This looks like moderate Republicans in the South who might not care about intersectionality, but do care about people's protecting people's right to speech. So I think it's very, very important to divert all of the resources and all of the volunteers to specifically liberal NGOs who are the best placed ones to be able to deal with these lawmakers. Or at the very least, on their side, when you fragment these NGOs, they can't present a unified front and have incentive to try and undercut each other insofar as now they're competing to lobby the same lawmaker rather than presenting a unified front. Before I go on.
Okay, if they are George Soros type, so crusty white old libertarian men, they won't receive the backlash because it's all on fucking TikTok and Instagram and they are probably operating an email. How does backlash actually reach them?
It's the left-wing people now who would have been aligned with this group anyway, now pull all their funding, or they don't volunteer, and they volunteer and they put their funding into a more left-wing organization that they think is more aligned with their views. Second mechanism, why does this harm lobbying? It's because now governments and politicians are far less likely to be accommodating to these NGOs and hear them out. Two possibilities. One, either maybe these NGOs cave to the left-wing people's demands, which is what opening opposition wants to access the benefits. When you do that, now you look like crazy leftists. Now you enable all of the narratives that the fucking deep state, or like all of these crazy snowflakes, are influencing government policy and taking over all these liberal NGOs. You create a media storm, and notably, most of these politicians aren't super woke, but they do care about things like individual liberty. But now, when you cave to the demands of the crazy left-wing people on Twitter and on TikTok, that is when crucially you look insane, and that's when politicians are more wary and and risk averse to dealing with these people. Like Bashir in Kentucky would never deal with a liberal NGO at the point in which now he's painted as something that's radical, because his platform is necessarily about doing something that's moderate and cleaving the third way. OO respond to opening government said their harms are temporary because maybe the NGOs just cave so the impacts don't operate for a long amount of time. But if they do cave, that is really bad for the long-term perception of the NGOs and their willingness of politicians to deal with them. Second alternative, maybe they just don't cave, in which case it's still bad for them optically because it generates a large amount of controversy and toxic discussion insofar as debating things in intersectionality necessarily require you to make a choice. Take a position, which social group do you care about more, and all of these things are necessarily evaluated and controversial. And so, when these politicians look at these NGOs and they seem unsatisfactory even to their own crowd, that is the point at which they don't think that they are satisfactory and are far less likely to listen to their demands. They don't want to cooperate with a controversial NGO, and NGOs are best when they're basically invisible, not when they're dragged through the limelight and tainted by controversy. All these reasons we're proud to go.
Thank you for that fine speech, and I call on the member of opposition to continue the debate. Were you walking under the camera? Yeah. Please we walk towards OG.
Movements thrive on solidarity. They thrive on us all being together on a single goal to make society better for everyone. What they do is essentially marginalize one part of this already disenfranchised group, maybe this is black women or certain poor women or trans people inside the LGBT community. They marginalize them. And these people are not going to be slaves of the majority NGO. They're likely to create, this is likely over the long term create division among these movements. This is horrible because over the long term, if you have divisions inside of these movements, this harms the movement overall, for the majority, but also the minority. This is a real extension. Before that, one crucial bit of framing, and that is this. NGOs are currently heavily biased in favor of the majority. This will do a couple of things, but firstly, why this is true. First, obviously, if it is a majority, let's say white, privileged women, if they're the majority, they are able to dictate most of the trend. They don't need most of the money. They are the most voices, they can tweet the most things, meaning that their problems and their views of reality are the most common ones in this movement. But secondly, oftentimes the leaders of these NGOs are really privileged because it's hard to be a leader. You don't earn enough money. You don't get to, it's how you have to be educated, you have to know a lot of people, networking, all those things. Meaning this is not someone likes to reach a story. Oftentimes these leaders of these NGOs are privileged. They have the education, they are well off, they have wealthy people. This means that they're usually out of touch with the actual problems of the actual movement, women on the ground, especially the minority movements later on, but even the regular people on these days. Thirdly, usually these leaders and these movements are unaccountable. Why? Because people still support them because they have no alternative, but also because these people have a moral high ground. They're leaders of this movement. You don't understand how this is hard. I'm doing the most work in all of these things. This is problematic because they are unaccountable, mean they can result to certain corruption, they can steal money, they don't have to do things in efficient ways. Why is this framing important? Firstly, this proves that even if we distribute money, the leader is talking about people are not going to get abortion. This is bullshit. Because we are redistributing money from obviously certain parts of the movement which are already well off, already have an abundance of money, to parts of the movement that are really far down, that don't have enough money. This is crucial because it takes down that comparative. But secondly, it proves the necessity of criticism. Why we need to criticize. Why overall in the comparative people don't know what to do and don't have an incentive. But third, this proves that people, without this criticism, and without any change, even opening opposition says, let's say, advising all these things, these people, leaders of the movement, even if they have incentive to help everybody, they don't have the ability because they don't have the knowledge what is going on the ground. What are these specific goals? How do we fix? They don't have the lived experience of all these things. So this framing in of itself is important. Second part of my speech is why will this work? Firstly, I think this is proven, but let me just do it one more time. If you divert, how do you say, funding to this will work because you will divert funding from these NGOs to other parts, so you have a monetary incentive. I think opening opposition proved that overall, for all general left wing, it will funding will be the same, but within certain organizations, maybe one will have less, so they have a monetary incentive to do this. But secondly, it's just shame. People are ashamed to do all this. They want to change because they feel this is a certain problem. Especially like Schneider and opening government and also causing, therefore saying these people are like kids who go, you criticize me, no, fuck you and all of these things. No, they generally want to help. They're progressive. Progressivism is, how do you say, built on criticism, on improving, doing the next step and all of these things. So these people are generally open to criticism, open to changing certain things, and this shame that this provides, this criticism is enough to change. So I really don't why treat these people as kids. I think they are valuable and they are able to do these things. Finally, here is how people will perceive themselves. Schneider says your dad will see you, see this movement, and then this criticism, he will think you are an idiot. But the thing is, look at their examples. Beefs on Twitter, on Instagram, influencers, left-wing influencers. My father, or father of whoever, certainly does not have this channel of communications to actually see these things. So when it comes to perceptions, this is not the case. I think even perception is on our side because when these divisions become much more bigger. So why moving on to the main part? Why over the long run this weakens the movement from the inside? This is because of the division between these groups. And they will be much bigger. So in the status quo, they're still part of these groups. They just have certain criticism and all these things. But if we don't address this criticism, this will create division for a couple of reasons. Firstly, ideological reasons. Even if they're less well off, people think that these people don't want to be treated that way. They don't want to be second-class citizens in this movement where they should have been first-class citizens. And this is awful for them because they feel betrayed more and more, but by the very safe space they should have been safe. But also for practical reasons. They don't believe they have the most votes. They want to say what is the agenda. They want to have their own platform and not just be subsequent second speaker and all of these things. But thirdly, if they don't accept this criticism, these fights will probably go even more and more. They will probably go back and forth and to create further chaos and further division by all of these things. So what are they less likely to do? Firstly, they're less likely to support the main messages of these biggest NGOs. Secondly, they're likely to, less likely to go to these events, but also they're less likely to provide funding for these things and all of these things. They're more likely to criticize them and create more division and all of these things. Why is this bad? We believe this is bad on a couple of fronts. If this movement is divided over the long run. Firstly, it is you're less likely to appeal to politicians. Why? Because outside the club, so the movement is a whole. It occupies a much broader group of people, meaning that it's incentivized by politicians to actually appeal to them and actually get them because they are a much bigger group. You raise 55, thank you, you are more likely to appeal to politicians because they are a majority group. On their side of the house, you are more spread out. Why should you appeal to this small group and based, political messaging, political capital on a smaller group? You're more likely to, appeal to politicians who have a bigger group and all of these things. But secondly, you're more likely to distribute and to get money and all these things. If everybody is donating to one organization or a smaller number of them and not 10, 15 on their side of the house, this money is likely to be spread out more evenly, obtain it and do it in a much more better manner. But thirdly, the message is stronger because firstly, more people will actually spread this message, whatever it is. The message will be stronger because more people spread it. But secondly, importantly, on their side of the house, there will be contradictory messages. Because these other movements are likely to contradict, no, this movement does not what they're talking about, this is the reality, and all this is. So even in messaging, it's important to have division. But fourthly, this actually signals to other people that this movement is in chaos. Because this division is now much bigger. Meaning that now Schneider's dad will actually see what his movement is supporting and he will be now disappointed in all of these things. So it is very important to actually appease these minority groups within these organizations because over the long term this will create division. We do believe that this is the main impact and this is why it's the openness. Thank you.
I would like to give up my speech. This government whip was basically government bench. Here.
What is this point? 555?
Order.
I'll be back, man. I need to notes. Forgive me for the transition for the help. I mean,
Before you would be reading at your kneecaps if it was on the table.
Okay, that's my excuse.
All right. Ready?
Yep.
We exist under a system of capitalist democracy that forces on us a necessary evil. 1 man, 1 vote has been supplanted by $1, 1 vote. In a world in which hostile actors are always lobbying the politicians who you need on your side to get the change that all teams in this debate want, other teams have to contend with the fact that they're defeating the single actor that is able to get this change. We show you the unique role that liberal NGOs play in this ecosystem in achieving this sort of middle ground lobbying between both Democrats and Republicans, between both liberals, conservatives, and left-wingers in getting this change for the most individuals within this debate. In this speech, I firstly want to respond to closing opposition, secondly I'm going to weigh us against your opening, and then I will basically place the case versus opening opposition. Firstly though, I want to be very clear in what Aidan brings to you in extension and the comparative margins on the mechanization you get from us in closing argument. Basically, what we give to you is that you're able to get a lot of the bipartisan work done that they don't on their side. And this was with some crucial pieces of framing. That is, the politicians who you're lobbying may be strong in their policy positions in public, but very often they're the types who are willing to engage in quid pro quos when those are relevant to them. Intuitively, this is because yes, you may have extremists within politics, but it's the case that many individuals will be from more moderate states or constituencies. It is the case that if you don't take the money, your opponent will, and they will be better able to place themselves against you in the next election, or will be doing better in parliament. Therefore, very pragmatically speaking, you need to take the money from someone. The question is, do you take it from the liberals, whose goals agree with the leftists, or do you take it from the right-wingers who will be lobbying against you on both sides of the house? The issue is that, regardless of what your NGO does, you are going to get problems on their side of the debate. The first thing Aidan tells you then is that when this motion happens, you fail to present a unified front. But this is crucially very different from the sort of thing that Orgy discusses. This is not about what the left does, but rather what it is that is a necessary implication of what the opposition wants. That is, what does it mean for an NGO to be intersectional? Yes, some of this affects how it treats your own workers, but crucially per the info slide, this is not just about how you treat your employees, but rather what you push for in your advocacy. What this means then is that to accept intersectionality is to be arguing that different forms of oppression are interlinked. Note what this looks like. It means that when you're advocating for abortion, you have to take a position on racial and gender issues. When you're advocating for free speech, you have to discuss the rights of migrants. The problem is it's very simple. On our side, when you're pushing for a single issue, this is very vanilla and very easy for a politician to associate with you. That is because you don't have to completely match a range of complex opinions with them, but rather not one issue that affects you and them. On their side, what happens then is that if it's the case that you're taking positions that are like basically inconsistent with what the politician wants, as in they may have been willing to compromise with you on the issue of abortion, for example, but may have very different positions on migration, it becomes far more difficult for them to associate with you at the point at which they see you as being politically opposed or potentially a bad faith actor that they cannot possibly agree with. The second mechanism here is that you can no longer do your work discreetly. And note why this is more important than what you hear in opening. This is because this works regardless of whether the behavior of these NGOs changes. That is, the attention and the backlash, and the fact that when you go on Twitter and you search them up, you see the criticism around them, prevents you from doing effective lobbying. This is very simple as to why it's true. Lobbying is something that is very unpalatable. That is, politicians will accept this money, but only insofar it's not done in the public eye. When it's the case that your NGO is being picked up by journalists, by hostile right-wing media, it's the case that any politician that's associated with you automatically is done for. You become toxic. It's now far more difficult for people to get in touch with you, and you're far more likely to be vilified by a large part of the voting base, and therefore you're less likely to be able to get this work done on your side. At this point then, I think we have presented compelling cases to why you're far less able to lobby. Impacts of lobbying. Firstly, just a direct policy change, and this is massive. This is things like being able to push for the enshrinement of many of these rights constitutionally. Things like abortion being a constitutional right in France would never have been done without this motion. Secondly though, even beyond this, it looks like making it easier to accept change in the future by shifting the discussion and making politicians be more friendly to avoid lashing out against you on our side of the house. Thirdly though, you're just able to change the behavior of regulators and decision makers. That is, even if you can't pass a vote in parliament, you can still lobby the people in government. This will affect things like the statutory instruments you pass in the UK, or how government agencies operate in the first place. And these can be very important for how many of the actors that have been in this debate want to discuss are treated. At this point then, we have the case, let's deal with the rest of the teams. Closing position. Basically what they say then is that this is going to be productive, and you're going to lose voters unless you do this. Firstly, I would point out that like the media and the journalists or whoever else I'm going to discuss will suffer from the same issues as many of the leftists on the internet, in that that is what they want to appeal to with their articles. Even beyond this, however, I would say that the most toxic voices become the most prominent on their side. Therefore, I don't think this criticism is going to be very effective. The next thing they say is that people are going to feel very betrayed by this safe space. The response here is simple, which is that intersectionality is not good in itself. Rather, it is instrumental. What it says is that we need to acknowledge the interlinking of oppression, and that this is epistemically required for you to know how to solve the issue. If they can't prove to you how they fix the problem, I don't think they actually have an argument within this debate. The final thing to respond to then is the idea of where the politicians are appealed to. Firstly, the number of voters just doesn't really change. You often only have one candidate you can vote for if you're on the left, and you don't really want to vote for the right-wing guy in the first place. You're locked with them and they know this. Secondly though, money is far more important to do your campaigning. If you can't campaign, you can't win the election. Sure.
Okay, the problem is that the lobby you are talking about does not exist outside America, free speech holders that have a lot of money. And even if the money is what speaks here for the lobbying, not narrations around it, why does it matter?
Look, the ordinary intelligent voter knows that lobbying is the case in most Western democracies. I don't know which of those characteristics you're lacking, but I suggest reading up more on how lobbying works. This is true in most democracies, especially in the West. At this point then, let me weigh your case particularly against our opening. I think at this point then, firstly, money is what buys campaigns, advertisements, and gets you the voters in the first place. It's more important then. I want to outweigh though the idea about individuals and revenue streams, because to be fair, OG say you lose out on crowd donations. Two responses here. Firstly, it's the case that most leftists are just fucking poor, right? I think that the people we're going to get the money from are the middle-line liberals, are the richer, millionaires who are willing to support you, but only if they don't see you as a left-wing nutjob, basically. Even if you lose the support of the left, I would posit this is far less important than the case we bring to you. But also secondly, it's the case that the alienation OG discusses is probably very unlikely. That is, I don't think many individuals would say that they no longer support abortion rights merely because they argue with somebody else on the left on Twitter, basically. Where this debate really lies in the perceptual harms of these organizations that affect the entirety of society, and for all these reasons, I'm very proud to propose.
And roll on the Abschrift, because there's the Abschrift and the debate as a whole. Here, here.
There is a caries in a teeth. We believe it is much better to drive a hole right now, take it out, that leave it inside, that it can grow and grow while we cannot control it anymore. The issue is that currently in status quo, a lot of the people before them have felt unrepresented, have felt they're not represented enough, that they're not taking care about them. The issue is that they do not have the strong enough voice to advocate that for themselves. They do not have enough power to actually combat this. But it doesn't mean that they don't get angry about this. This does not mean that they don't think that it is unfair. Furthermore, notice that a lot of the people who are not minorities also feel that way because they hear from the friends of the who are minorities, and because they're generally left-leaning, they're likely to, opt out into this narrative more. Meaning that you get a group of people who is against this. This doesn't have to be 60%. If you get 30% of the general supporters of the movement who are against this, this is the point at which they can actually take out this. What we really think is unique and best in this criticizing is that you get the voices who are powerful enough to change the behavior of this movement so they can accommodate those people and don't make mess in the future. But no, I'll take okay. Why is it likely that it's going to be done in a good way? The government presumes like the people are going to stop it and say, oh, everything on the left is bad, the whole movement is bad, just destroy everything. No, I think those who criticize care about the movement, care about the cause. This means that they're likely to say, look, people, they're not representing them enough. But listen, this doesn't mean that the cause is not good enough. This doesn't mean that we should, divide and destroy everything. It is likely that they're going to say, we should just change how we do these things, we should do it together, and we should actually make it better. Will there be some individual NGOs that will portray that? Maybe. But I think that is likely to be at the beginning, which is going to be used to actually show how it should be done in a good way. I think at the end of the day, the message overall is going to be overwhelmingly to still show that the movement as a whole is good exactly because they hear what the governments want to show you that it's going to be better. On their side of the house, after some time, when people get pissed enough, and then you get the mass big enough, that is the point at which people start to talk about. But then all of them start to talk about, and all of them are pissed enough. They're not going to say, oh, they're going to change something slow. No, that is the time when all of them go to social media. That is the time when all of them go to streets, fuck up protests, fuck up the organizations and everything that this NGO does. And that is the point at which the perception is going to be much more ruined. Because when they see this huge support, we're not going to be, so thinking about how they're going to do it. Are they going to do it in a bad way, but actually going to do it out of anger? That is the point which is much more hurtful for the movement and much worse. Okay. What, no, 550, okay, please. Okay, so what does the OG says? Basically, first of all, money will be taken out of this. Notice that back the characterization that I give you, this is going to be done in a way that is usually, good to the movement, actually deals with that. But furthermore, how do people think about this? First of all, notice that most of the money that is actually given to those organizations come from the companies. The companies is not going to look, oh, did someone says they did one thing wrong? They're most likely to just give money generally to those things. But second of all, people who do donate money, they do it because they believe the cause is good. And furthermore, they do not have a strong association with NGOs. They have strong association as a the movement as a whole and as cause as a whole. They don't identify as XY NGO. They identify as feminists. They identify as somewhat cause, meaning that that's what they that's what they support in the first place. Meaning that they are extremely unlikely to just abandon it because they feel that is important, because they feel that people who suffer do not deserve to actually just don't get funding in the first place, meaning they're likely to just give it to someone else. And they're saying, oh, they're going to feel complicity to this. No, exactly because they feel that they are, at the end of the day, helping people who need help. They're not going to feel complicit. They don't feel complicit if they gave up on actually helping those people, meaning that it's unlikely to do so. And then they say, oh, it's going to be moved from one place to the other, but then you're depriving those in the first place. But then, by that logic, by giving to the first one, you're depriving in the second one. There is no way to actually prioritize. The premise of that the one who wanted to donate first has a priori some moral foreground to actually be donated. I don't think that's true anymore. Okay, period.
World culture is fractured because the messages that minorities have to cannibalize themselves for resources. Having a few minority hires in a field that hires so few people is not worth trading off the fix to umbrella issues and a unified call
at the point at which you hire some people, when minority races see that is the point, you don't need to represent anyone. When they see some representation, that's when they feel that somebody is taking care of them. You don't need to employ people. It is enough to say, look, we are looking out for you too. We are seeing your problems. Here's your problems. There are things to actually deal with. What does the closing government says? The closing government says, oh, basically you're going to fuck up clothing. Notice firstly that they presume that that these kind of groups are pretty that people think so much differently about it. Notice that most people who support different races having represented also support abortion and stuff like that. It is unlikely that those people, that a lot of the people have different preferences about it, because all of this is generally left-leaning, except for free speech. That is completely outside, but I don't know why those people would support it. Anyway, with that speech, free speech come with you know, bad things about migrants and everything. I think that in most of the countries, people are divided enough that they usually support most of those things. But even when you actually, you know, include those things, if you are supporting a right to abortion, and someone says, oh, black people should also have abortion, if you support it, you're more likely to care about abortion in the first place. You're saying, oh, but I don't think that black people who immigrated now should get an abortion. If you support an abortion, it is much more likely, it's important enough for you that you're actually going to think about it. How do we compare to our opening? I don't think our opening explains the impacts well enough. They're saying they're going to employ some people they're going to have. What does it actually mean? You have to imagine what is the end impact of that itself. But second of all, our impact is much more long-term. Without our impact, there is no movement.
That was great debate. Please go outside the room, shake hands, etc., etc.
Everyone, hi. Yeah, just very briefly, I'll apologize to everyone. I do think my PR response was called for. It's been a long, stressful day. I'm really sorry about that.
Thank you.